Hi, I'm Leslie Randall. I'm the cervical cancer clinical trial advisor for GOG Partners under the GOG Foundation. And I'm a GYN oncologist at Virginia Commonwealth University Massey Cancer Center. And I'm happy to be here today to talk about one thing that is near and dear to my heart, which is trial accrual culture. And we're so lucky today to have with us Dr. William Bradley, a member of our Investigators Council here in the GOG Partners in the Foundation. Hi, Dr. Bradley. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. I'm William Bradley. I am a GYN oncologist at Froedtert in the Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
That's great. It's so great to have you here. You know, we invited you because you've done a great job building this accrual culture at your institution. And I know that you have kind of given us your thoughts, and we have 10 things that we want to cover with everyone today. And so we're just going to dive right into number one on our list, and that is commitment through the division. So I'm a division director, and I know how important this is to come from top down, bottom up, all around. Like everyone has to be bought in. Tell us about your experience with that.
Yeah, that's absolutely a cornerstone for us. So we meet as a division routinely. We have set meetings twice a month, as well as a disease-oriented team meeting that kind of covers some of our obligation to our cancer center, and then also gives us a chance to discuss the status of our trials, what's working, what's not working, keeps us kind of fresh on what's open and what's coming down the pike as we start to plan for what's going to happen for patients who are on trial or on standard of care therapy, but we're a little concerned that they may be about to progress. We have a CT coming up. What do we do? And it gives us a chance to refresh and remind ourselves. Certainly having everybody on pulling the same direction really makes a big difference for us.
Yeah, and we have a similar situation. And I think, you mentioned, hitting more than one priority with a single action, right? Because we're pulled in so many directions. I think the more that we can sort of integrate our programs, like when you have these meetings, you look for patients, you're making sure that patients are getting the highest quality care. You're training your trainees on how to do this and building team cohesion. So I just couldn't agree more that what seems like a simple meeting really covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. It's important, we engage faculty, but we also engage our nurse practitioners, our fellows, and our research wing too. So our CRCs, our RNs, our CRAs. So we've got everybody kind of at the table to be able to participate and make sure that we're keeping absolutely up to date.
That's great. We're actually going to hit on that later again. So observing successful sites, tell me about your experience there.
Yeah, this was a thing we did early on. So when I started in my position, we were not a member of the GOG. We were just an ancillary site. This is back in the old GOG days, and that was our first goal. And so we decided to we need to look at excellence, and Oklahoma has sort of stood for that in the GOG for a number of years. I think we all acknowledge that in terms of accrual, in terms of leadership, et cetera. And so in this case, we invited ourselves there, and they were very kind to agree to host me and one of our research nurses. And we flew to Oklahoma and spent a full day there. They gave very generously of their time, their space, their effort, et cetera, and just gave us a real complete 360-degree view of what they're doing. It was really, it's inspirational, it's aspirational. You don't necessarily think, okay, well, I'm going to go home and I'm going to recapitulate that tomorrow, but at least it gives you, okay, these are some key things. These are some milestones to hit. This is what's working. These are problems for everybody. So, the more that I think we can work with each other across sites and find out what's working for everybody, the more things and more tools we have in our toolkit and that we can use in our own sites. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. And I love the idea of working more together, as we transitioned from, GOG, the NRG, and now bringing the GOG partners online, like there's not as much opportunity to engage. There is opportunity to engage, but I think it could be better. I think it could be more robust. And that's part of the impetus for developing the investigators council that you sit on. And I think, the more we open up and engage our membership, the better.
Yeah,
So,
I think we're all faced with a lot of similar problems, and we
yeah.
think it's just unique to our situation, but it's not. So I think we can help each other a lot, and I think we can really save each other a lot of redundancy and anxiety over, do I need to respond to all these safety notices? How do I deal with it? Just, up and down the chain, aside from just doing good clinical trial practice and doing good practice. We share a lot of the same issues, even if, academic centers, private practice, you name it. I think we have a lot more in common than we have that's different.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, I want to tell you, I think it's inspirational that I never knew a time when you didn't have a robust program. And so to me, to hear you tell this story about how, you had to build from the ground up, which, as you know, is what I'm doing right now. And to know that, you reached out for help and that you were able to build what you have now from nothing, I think is, just proof positive that people can do this. We'll talk a little bit more about what you need to make it happen, but you can do this.
Yeah.
If you're a younger program, you just got to do one day at a time. Like you said, you're not going to build it overnight. You're not going to be, it took Oklahoma years and years to gain that level of excellence. And so that's going to be required for anyone. I think that's what I'm the worst about, is just being impatient, wanting it to happen overnight, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Right. No,
if you want it to, you'll derail it, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you got to pick what you're good at to start, and got to be really focused and, expand at, appropriate steps. But, it certainly can be done. I mean, like you said, we were an ancillary site, and, we were able to get membership, and then we were able to take it from there. So
that's great. Well, this is a great segue into the next point. So point number 3, identify trials that you can succeed in enrolling. Yeah. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the hardest thing in some ways, isn't it, for all of us, right? Because we, you get pinged all the time about, open this, open that, and you do a CDA, and you're like, oh, this looks like an interesting drug, or oh, it's biomarker driven. We see this sometimes, blah blah blah. I think we try and kind of keep a mindset of having certainly a redundancy in trials, especially certainly things like ovary, right? Platinum resistant ovary. And I don't mean to sound facetious or critical or anything like this, but when I have to give topotecan to a woman with ovarian cancer, platinum resistant ovarian cancer, I feel kind of disappointed. I feel like I need to be able to give her something better than that. So
I think we should all feel that way.
Redundancy is important in that, certainly in that space. It's always nice to have a primary ovary trial, right? Because there's just, those patients need studies, and and then I think you look at your population. Do you see a lot of cervix? Do you not see a lot of cervix? I think there's variance across the country. What have you done well on in the past? We taught ourselves recently, we had an IIT for a recurrent endometrial cancer, 1 or 2 prior lines, and we were able to enroll 16 patients in 2 years. So I'm like, I think we got the population.
Yeah,
like we concluded that one. So now we need to get some more recurrent endometrial trials, right?
Right.
And, you don't necessarily dig for those as hard as you necessarily do for ovary. So I think, you teach yourself a little bit. Is it a matter of the patients? Is it a matter of the biomarker? Is it a matter of the commitment on the part of the team? So, but try and build off your strengths.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. It's hard to do, and it's a balance, having enough trials open so that you can enroll patients, but not having so many that you're sabotaging your success.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Great advice. So for number 4, I'm going to go back to those meetings that you talked about in the beginning. So you mentioned that regular meetings among your division and research group are critical. Tell us about your meeting structure.
Yeah, so I mean, we do run an agenda, right? I mean, they're pretty standardized meetings in which we have like, okay, we do regulatory. If there are safety notices, we need to reconsent, et cetera, so that we can, it's a little bit of ticking the box, but it's also making sure we're all on the same page. Then we also review where we're at with trials that we're opening, and then importantly, I think we review the trials that are open and with specific focus on what's not accruing. Why aren't we accruing to this trial? What's going on? Do we need to keep it open? Do we need to think about closing it? We're under pressure from our CTO to close trials, right? I think everybody is. If it's not a successful trial, you're supposed to jettison it. Well, I mean, I imagine I'm like a lot of us that, we kind of like our trials and we can think of a reason to keep them open. So we got to look harder at those. Is it, am I just being biased, or is there actually something we could do better? Do we need to do more specific outreach for this specific trial? Are we not looking in the right ways? Is it actually a rarer disease than we thought when we opened it? So those are ones that really take a lot of focus.
Great. How often are you guys meeting?
So we have two interdepartmental meetings that address those things, and we take time out of one of our tumor boards to have what we call a disease-oriented team, or DOT meeting, which is just something that our cancer center uses as a terminology. Probably other people use the same, other people use different, and that's a required meeting, and that's an interdisciplinary meeting where we actually do formal things like approve a trial or decide to close a trial, et cetera. So, and then that gives us a chance to, we usually integrate things like presentations and other things like that in that kind of meeting.
So you guys are pretty much at a steady state. We're building a program, and so we meet formally once a month, but we found really quickly that there was no way that was adequate as we're ramping up and starting trials. So we really meet, like we have the bigger formal meeting once a month, but in the meantime, once a week, we have sort of a smaller group that can move faster to make sure that things are moving and developing. And maybe once we get to a more steady state, we'll sort of peel that back a little bit. But for now, we just really have to have that time investment and that close engagement.
Yeah, I mean, but to your point, and I think this is it, you got to pick what works for you and what you need. Like when we've gone back and looked at trials, like we have a trial that we didn't accrue well to, and we went back and looked at it, and we're like, okay, well, we got the trial on this date and we didn't approve it to move to the scientific review committee for another month. What did we do wrong here? And probably it just landed on our desk the day after we had our DOT meeting. Well, then we need to, so then we say to ourselves, okay, when it's a trial that we know that we're going to want to open, we don't need to wait another month. We need to, we need to expedite that. And we can do that by voting via email or some other way that's acceptable to our cancer center. And then we can, then we don't need to sit on things for longer than necessary.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that structure. I mean, you can be in an overly structured place or program where you've eliminated the ability to do that by design, and that may not be beneficial.
Yeah, it can bite you. It can bite you.
Yeah. Interesting. Great. Okay, this is great information. So we're on to number 5, and number 5 is I really want to hear your thoughts on this. So, I think as gynocs, we all function in the OBGYN and cancer center interface, however functional or dysfunctional that might be. And so in your case, you all have kept your trials under your departmental arm. Is that right?
That is correct.
Talk to us about that dynamic.
Everything in the world is temporary, so I'm going to look at it like it's temporary, but it's going to be as long as it can be temporary. We were able to do that really through our chair, who's a GYN oncologist, and that's one of the things she asked for when she got here, and that made a big difference. It's when you look at time to opening and things like that, candidly, we're able to do better. That I think the thing that you do when you have something like this is you keep a running list of the things that you're going to need when the clinical trials office comes to take you over. And I know that sounds a little cynical, and I don't mean it that way. I just mean that, there's always going to be a push towards standardization and homogenization within a larger institution. And I get that. So, what do we need when they're going to take us over? What are we going to stand? What are we going to stand on? We need to have this kind of response. We need to have this kind of timeline. We need to be able to open this many trials, that kind of thing. And what I don't want to get caught up in is being, as GYN oncologists, we're not dealing with colon cancer or breast cancer where the numbers are big, right? And so we're always going to be a little bit of an orphan disease site, and we need to be able to protect ourselves from being dismissed because we don't have 47 people on each trial. And so being able to kind of highlight, okay, maybe we only enrolled 6 patients on this trial, but we only saw 10 that would be appropriate. So actually our accrual is great, so things like that, but also, again, like I was saying earlier, things that we would need if we went into the CTO. We try and keep track of that, but, not everybody can do it. We keep our books pretty tight. We make sure that they know that they're not losing money on us, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I think it's something that has been sort of like a political thing. It's sort of charged, and there's a lot of sort of judgment, that can go both ways in terms of who you align with. But I think really it's all about just, being able to conduct the trials because that's good for patient care. And really you're just trying to take care of patients.
Right. I mean, I think
you get what you need. You get what you need. It sounds like you had a need, and usually it's infrastructure. Just like getting the right people in place to support your program, because clearly, you can't do that as yourself with a busy practice. And
right. Well, and we're serving the cancer center, right? I mean, from like you said, I don't mean to make it sound strictly political. Like, the most important thing is making sure your patients have the best care. And, that supersedes whatever else. And that's what this is in service of. But if the cancer center is going to come and look at us, we're going to say, look, we're this many patients in the cancer center, but we're this many accruals. Are you sure you want to, do you want to, if you can take care of us and keep us there, then great. If you can't, let us keep doing this thing. And
yeah, I really want to hit this home. I think you and I see the value of clinical trials to patient care, but I don't think everyone sees that. I think, sometimes clinical trials by, a lot of people are, people in your institution are seen as this extra thing that, if we get all this taken care of, then we can do clinical trials as a cherry on top. I can't take care of patients without clinical trials.
Right. No.
I can't take good care of patients without trials.
No, I mean, going back to, I remember talking to Joan Walker when I was very junior, and her saying, the standard of care is terrible. I mean, she didn't quite say that. She said not good enough.
Yes.
And I've never forgotten that, right? I mean, the standard of care is just not good enough. So if we're going to say to women with ovarian cancer, flip a coin and you'll be dead in 5 years. That's the way it goes. We're doing the best we can. That doesn't really sound, that's not why I went into this job.
Me neither. That doesn't resonate with me either. And I think if people really think about it from that perspective, it doesn't, the fact that they get the best care on clinical trials will really resonate with them. Okay, we digressed a little bit, but that was such a great point. I just wanted to hone in on that a little bit. Okay, we're going to get back to our list. Number 6, I love this one. Number 6, value everyone. This is not a hero culture. This is what they call a process culture. This is a team sport, right? Tell me how you value and show value to the members of your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, when we do have meetings as a group, it's not just the physicians talking and everybody else listening. And when we talk about why something is or isn't working, certainly, research managers have a role of explaining why trial did or didn't succeed, et cetera. But CRCs and CRAs can help us understand a lot about what we're doing well with data, what we're doing well with process. One thing to this point that I've started doing, and I think I may be wrong, but I think a lot of people have challenges with CTO and with personnel. And it's not that, not that they don't care or something like that, but that they come and go.
Right.
And I've heard
Turnover,
this more and
especially
more
during the
lately.
pandemic. I think
Right.
it's gotten a little bit worse.
So
Yeah.
the office culture has changed, and I think it's kind of incumbent upon us to figure out how we can roll with this. And I've started doing exit interviews with people,
Uh-huh.
and I've actually learned a lot. They're not, they don't all sound the same. Some people are happy, some people aren't, and it's important to hear why somebody's happy. It's important to hear why somebody's not. And people are candid in exit interviews, perhaps in a way that they're not when you ask them, how's your job going? They're,
Right.
maybe a little more guarded then. So that's been something I'm going to probably continue with anybody who works in our group. The other thing is kind of looking at, they're going to CRC, CRAs, like, this is a little different from what you asked, but like a lot of our CRAs, they want to go to med school. They want to, it's a
Right.
stepping
It's
stone.
the
Like,
stepping stone. Right.
and let's be candid about it. How do we help you get what you want, as you're going on in your career, whatever it's going to be? Do you need a letter of support? Do you need certain experiences that are going to really, resonate with your application to whatever it's going to be? Can we do that for you? And if that's integrated into their work, I think that shows a level of appreciation for what they do that hopefully will reciprocate, and they're able to really engage the work.
Yeah. For us, I think it's morale and really, if you think about it, a lot of our CTO support staff is disengaged from the patient. They
Mhm.
don't get to see the patients. And so, they love this work. They're invested in the outcome of the work. That's why they do it. But they're they're disconnected from the patients. And so, the more that I found, the more that we can sort of loop them into the patient care aspect of it, the better. So
Yeah.
I feel like that really has made, a difference for them morale wise.
We do that. We have our CRCs meet patients in the clinic. They do some consenting. They do some AE discussions, and starting to help with logs and things like that. And it's not just data. It's not just it's not just reg, et cetera. So and they need support with that. You can't just put them in a room and say, okay, take care of it. You really
Right.
need to make them feel like they know what they're doing and that they're not just out on an island, and because that's intimidating too. But yeah, absolutely. It's I think that keeps it fresh.
There's no manual, there's no playbook for how to support your team in that way. But I think if you listen to them, like you clearly do listen to your team and take what, their feedback into consideration and make changes in response to it, that you'll find these sorts of themes popping up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Number 7, flexibility. How do you guys remain flexible as a team?
Yeah, you have to be flexible on being flexible, don't you? You can't always
Yes.
be flexible. But there are times, you've seen this, right? There's times when new patients are rolling in and you just have to get them taken care of. And then there's times you're like, well, where the hell did all the patients go? And you're
I
like, I
thought
haven't
that just happened to me.
and you're like, wait, there's no, I haven't seen an ovary in a month. What's going on? And so we do our nurse practitioners are employed through. I do have a funny setup. So we are Freighter in the medical college. The medical college is my boss. Freighter, it's my hospital. Most nurses are employed by Freighter, but our nurse practitioners work for us in the medical college. And so we don't boss them around exactly, but we do ask them to help with things if they're not as taxed in the clinic. We just had one out on maternity leave, so they're taxed in the clinic while she's gone. But now she's back. Can they help with things that we're not getting as much support on from the clinical trials office? Can they look ahead in the week and look at the patients coming? Because they know the patients really well, right? They see everybody's patients. So they know my patients and all my partners' patients. Can they look at them and say, she's got a CAT scan coming up and her TA125 is going up, what trials could she go on? And then that gives us even, and how this is, like even a few days of head start really helps for having a much more cohesive plan. And, you got to even think about, it gets a little granular, but you think about, okay, do I order the CAT scan now or in a week? You know, do I have a trial in a week for this patient? You know, whereas if I do it now, I don't have a trial for
Will
her.
they still be in the window if I,
Right,
do I need to wait a week
exactly.
to keep them in the window
So,
so they don't have to do it twice? And
you know, so this is where
Mhm.
engaging everybody and really trying to task them with thinking about this stuff, you know, I mean, it's not always going to be sweet perfection, but you know, you're going to have more people, and you know, it's like the Swiss cheese, and you're going to have, you know, maybe you have the same number of holes, but you got more cheese to try and block some of the stuff from slipping through. So,
Yeah, that's great. We have this safety sort of, it's from a safety perspective. We have the saying that, my chance of making an error is 1 in 1,000 and yours is 1 in 1,000, but our chance of making it together, if we put our heads together, is 1 in 1,000,000.
right,
So I would go better, the 1 in 1,000,000, but I think that the same could be, the corollary could be the same. Like the chance of success is, higher with the teamwork that you're describing.
yeah, no, I mean, I think you got some people, you know, like there's some of us are really engaged in trials, and so maybe it's in the front of their minds more often, and you know, they can rattle off the numbers and the names and all that kind of thing. And there's other people that they care, but that's not exactly what their mindset is. And that's, you know, they've got other things that take their attention. And that's okay as long as we're kind of iterating this and reiterating it in a way that, you know, we're all able to capture in it, you know, in the bandwidth that we have.
Yeah, it goes back to that flexibility. Like, even if
Yeah.
it's not my main priority, I engage you because I know that you can help me with this
Right.
and you can give this to my patient.
Right.
Yeah, the other theme I'm hearing from you is like being really proactive, like not being reactive. Like the
Right.
trial is not the second thought. The trial is the first and foremost thought. And that's how we approach trials, from a very proactive perspective. And I
Right.
mean, that's how we open trials. We open trials, first, second, third line. Okay, how's this going to affect? What's the trickle down effect? The immune therapy trials in the cervix space have been really tough because they've had immune therapy in every line of therapy, and then the exclusion for the next trial is prior immune therapy. And
Yep.
so, we didn't set ourselves up best for success in that way, but that's really kind of what are the important trials right now. So we decided to keep them open, but that did affect us more than we anticipated. So.
No, and what your point is really well taken, because you know, it's an evolution, right? You have to kind of, you know, change your practice as it goes a little bit to accommodate some of these things, and it's not doing things you don't believe in, but like I you know, bevacizumab is a a precondition for a lot of ovary studies right now, and that's, you know, and that's become a drug that we use earlier on, and we think about earlier on, even off study, because we know that it's going to open those doors for those patients, you know, at the second, third, fourth recurrence. And then to your point, we do spend some time thinking about, okay, when you open a trial, like what order does it go in, right? I mean, and we think we all do this, but you know, okay, if they do this one, can they do this one after, or they have to do it in the reverse fashion? And how do you best, how do you do things so that even if they're competitive, they're non-mutually exclusive, and so the patient can potentially benefit from both of them,
Yeah,
or
I think
more.
that's key. That's so key. And it's all related.
Yep.
It all matters. You have a finite resource, our most precious resource, our patients. And
Yep.
so it all connects. I love how you think. I think that you have to think that way to really build a successful program.
Yep.
So we're on to number 9, and this is something that a lot of us have to do because we're at NCI designated or hopeful centers, and tying your research aims into the scientific development that are priorities of your cancer center.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I would, say, at least in my experience, this may be technically a little bit more nebulous, but it's certainly a greater and lesser part, and it's a goal. And I hope a greater and lesser part to everybody's practice. To try and keep these guys. So we meet with the bench folks. Also, we have standing meetings. And that's a little more open. It's not necessarily everybody in the research division, but it's certainly all the faculty and fellows, et cetera. And what are they working on? What advice can we give them about salient topics of interest in, in the quote unquote clinical, well, in the clinical space. And then, how do we serve them? What do they need? Do we do, we try and facilitate their tissue banking as to the greatest degree we can, things like that. Does it necessarily immediately tie into what we do in GOG Partners or whatever else, that we're doing for our research? Well, not always by any means, but, it's certainly a pipeline for proposals. It's a pipeline for next steps. And we want to try and, be that resource. I remember Dr. Anil Sood was kind enough to give us a talk a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that Dr. Coleman used to go to all their lab meetings, and it's like, yeah, that's obviously great thing to do, right? I mean, even if he's not able to make some of them, if he's present and able to talk about how to facilitate moving this to something that gets to patient facing stuff, because I think it's easy for us to drift, and it's a different culture, right? It's a culture that they're serving very different masters, if I can put it that way, than we are, right? And they need to get these large grants, and they need to compete at a level for things that it's just very different from seeing people and doing a level 4, level 5 visit, or doing a surgery or whatever it is that we do. And how do we make sure that we're actually talking the same way and are sympathetic to each other's needs?
I think it's really, it's important. And when you're at a big center, you do have to sort of balance those priorities so that your trials are, prioritized as well. I love how clinical trials have evolved in the way that you don't have to be at a big center anymore to be successful at running clinical trials. A lot of the translational components of our trials now are companion diagnostics, and they're CLIA, and they're commercial. And, I don't think that's necessarily, a bad thing. But to have the ability to do some more kind of offshoot translational work and engage your PhDs and build goodwill with your cancer center when you are in these big centers helps you to maintain and prioritize both your NCI portfolio and your industry portfolio, which is, really important. Like if you're not allowed to open an industry trial because you need to focus on, the more NCI or the more basic science translational priorities of your institution, it ties your hands in because some of our better trials are in the industry space right now.
Right.
It's just a reality.
Right.
It's not my opinion at all. That's just a fact. And so I think just having that, depending on where you are, just maximizing your potential for what you can contribute is kind of what it boils down to for me on that point.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, like you're saying, kind of picking what you're good at and, really, digging into that success.
So we are going to bring it home with something that I think is a great topic to round out the discussion. And this is number 10 on your list, and that's outreach. So this is something I feel like I need to do a lot more of, and I don't do well. And talk to us about outreach. Help us get good at this.
Yeah, I wish I'd love to have all the answers on that. But we do keep our own website up. We have in the department embedded person who does this, and then we've got it linked so that trials that are open are listed. Now that requires that somebody, either the patient, which is hard for them to do, or the referring clinician, which is also hard for them to do, go and look, but it's there. And I think that's at least a bare minimum. When we have trials, I mentioned trials that aren't recruiting. Sometimes if we have a trial that isn't recruiting well, we'll send out a letter. And just, and it's hard to know what what it is that, will trigger somebody. Is it an email? Is it a letter? But we try and do that, especially if we have a study that is unique to our institution. Like we have a TIL trial for cervix that's unique to the state, right? And it's a Medicaid population. They're not really able to travel as well. So, even though our colleagues in Madison do a wonderful job taking care of these patients, that's a possibility that, that perhaps that we can offer them. And it's not about taking a patient. It's just about offering something else for the patient if they're appropriate for it. So, you know, we'll reach out for something like that, or other population centers where we see patients that are, you know, that we want to really remind, that usually the medical oncologist, but sometimes the GYN oncologists, you know, hey, you know, we've got this, or even the radiation oncologist sometimes, you know, but trying to keep as much as we can, as current as we can, the lists of who these folks are, how do we contact them, being responsive, certainly if they try and contact us. I think we all try and do that, right? But yeah, it's a work in progress. I mean, I agree with you, Leslie. It's hard, you know,
It's harder than it should be, right?
I know you feel like, you know, it's obvious, right? But
Yes,
it's
it's great
not,
growth.
it's
It's not that easy. And I wish it were, you know, for us, like we, you know, really want to partner with, you know, people, you don't have to be in you know, in an academic center to get good cancer care.
yeah.
But, you know, we want to be that resource for, you know, things outside of the standard of care. And of
Right.
course, we're trying to change the standard of care in many situations. So, you know, in essence, we do want to get their patients for treatment, but, you know, we want to send them back. We want to collaborate with them. We want them to have input on, okay, I'd really love to see you open this kind of trial. We've developed a quarterly journal club that we invite our catchment area to, and it's really to outside physicians or the target audience to educate them on what's happening. And the second is to sort of try and get their feedback on our trials program and try to engage them for our clinical trials. And so we sort of have those two objectives in doing that.
It's a nice,
you know, just getting people there. It's been nice with the, you know, the pandemic with the Zoom, but honestly, I think people are a little bit more like Zoom fatigued at this point. So I don't know. I think you just have, it goes back to number 8, flexibility, or number 7 was flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, we have to kind of pivot this and just respond to people's, you know, communications needs, and they change. They're not fluid, but you can't just sit here in the ivory tower expecting people to send you their patients. You just can't do that. You have to reach out to them.
Yeah, and I think what you said though is kind of, that's certainly how I try and think about our role is we're not trying to take every patient. We're trying to be of service when they're getting to the point where they don't have something for the patient, or they feel like what they have is inadequate for the patient's needs. And we want to keep ourselves at least in their, in their mind of like, okay, I've done this, I've done that. And, that's a process. I mean, I think, for my center, I think we've gotten better at it. And I think we're more of that than we were when I got here, but, it's still not perfect and it needs to be better. And, there are patients I think that would come that, just don't get to hear about things. And so how do we facilitate that?
I think, one thing that we need to communicate, that would be great to communicate to our outside providers referring for trials is, take, for example, the Keynote B21 endometrial cancer trial, which is, pembrolizumab with chemotherapy in the front line for patients who've had curative intent surgery but are high risk and need chemo.
Yeah.
And, they can do the surgery. I don't need to do the surgery. I need to see them after surgery if their pathology comes back, qualifying them for the study. So you do the surgery and then send them, to me for chemotherapy. What's another carboplatin and Taxol off of your roster? I think that, and, I think all those doctors want to see patients have access to, pembrolizumab and potential to change the standard of care. Like, there's a high likelihood that will change that frontline standard. Yep. And
totally agree.
Or they give them chemotherapy and we have, selinexor maintenance for stage 4 uterine. You give the chemotherapy, and when they're done, they can go on the switch maintenance trial with us. So you're really having to, they're needing to know about these trials before they even start these patients on treatment.
Yeah.
Being able to collaborate in that way. And so that's my pie in the sky, like ability to communicate. And, I don't know. I challenge the people that are listening to this. If you have great ideas here, and there's so many brilliant people in our specialty, like, contact us and tell us, like, to me, like, this would really take us all to the next level with our trials. And we are ready to help these patients, but just connecting is so.
I think I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think you're hitting on a really important point. I mean, I think we all, as GYN oncologists, we've seen referrals where, Mrs. Jones has gotten 6 cycles of chemo for her ovarian cancer. Now she's here for debulking surgery. And you're like, okay, I mean, we'll take care of the patient and we'll do the best we can, but we really need to, I mean, we're all physicians. We're advanced degree people. We're capable of understanding this stuff. We just need to figure out the right ways to say, okay, this is going to be the best way to kind of facilitate this. You don't have to send me to this patient every time point, but I need her at time point X and then at Y, and then you can do all the other stuff, or we can figure out the best way. And like you said, if we can if we can make it easier for these guys, and they're everybody's working hard to take care of patients, there's no question about that. It's just we want to make sure that we bridge those gaps and really promote it as much as we can to serve them as well as we can.
Well, this has been really great. I'm just going to recap for the audience. I'm going to just go through your list again because it's such a great list. So number one was commitment through your division, both the high levels and the low levels, all the way across the board. Number two, observing successful sites. 3, identifying trials that you can succeed in enrolling. 4, regular meetings among your division and research group. 5, departmental research arm, potentially if that fits your situation, or however, just structure it however best fits your situation. 6, value everyone on your team. 7, flexibility. 8, bigger picture. 9, tying your research aims into scientific development if that's a priority of your institution. And 10 is outreach. So I think we covered it. This has been great. Thank you so much for
absolutely
helping with this and sharing your experience with our investigators. And I hope that, feel free, people out there watching this, reach out to us, engage us. We really, want to work as a group, and we're so much better as a group than we are in our little silos. So
yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for the time and appreciate it. Glad to do it.
Great.